All right, we're going to start 3E notes. 3E notes we have, so the first one, we are solving quadratics. We're going to solve it with the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, I did not write this anywhere, so I'm going to have to write this up top. First, we have the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is saying that our equation has to equal 0 before we can figure out what our a is, which is a coefficient in front of the x squared term, what our b is, which is a coefficient in front of the x term, and our c, which is our constant, just the number. And the formula, so this is the equation, quadratic equation. And so when you see that the biggest exponent is a 2, that is a quadratic equation. Quadratic is 2. Then we have the quadratic formula that we use to solve the equations. The formula is x equals an opposite of b plus or minus. So there's two solutions here from the plus minus. B squared minus 4ac. All of that is divided by 2a. That will give us our two solutions. Biggest exponent in simplified form is 2, so then that will give us two solutions. And again, the solutions come from the plus and the minus. I'll talk a little bit as we get to it throughout the problems. So the first thing we do is we're going to combine all the terms to the same side, and we're going to keep the a positive. So we look at where the a term is. The a term is 11m squared. I do not see in any other terms any m squareds. So that tells me that the 11m squared, I don't have to combine anything. The 11 is positive, so I'm going to keep that on the left side of the equal sign. I'm going to move the negative 4 to the left side then and add 3m, which has a like term with the 9m, to the left side. And together then we have 11m squared plus 12m plus 4, and it equals 0. So now we have the equation equaling 0. Now we can pull out of here what our a is. A is our constant of the squared term. B is our constant of the m term. And c is our constant at the beginning, or our number at the end. And then look at, make sure you're always circling the operation. So it's positive 12, it's positive 4. And we're going to substitute each of these variables or numbers for the variable in the formula. So the formula is x equals the opposite of b plus minus b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that is divided by 2 times a. Now we're on to step 3, so that's simplifying. Step 3 is simplify each term of the formula. So I'm going to simplify the first term. So let me highlight when I simplify. So opposite of positive 12 is negative 12. Now underneath the square root, I do 12 squared, which is 144. And then I do 4 times 11 times 4, which is 44, 160, 176, minus 176. And then I divide that by 2 times 11, which is 22. I'm going to continue to simplify. I'm going to simplify the 144 minus 176, which is a negative 12 plus minus the square root of negative 32 divided by 22. At this point now, we are looking at simplifying the square root of negative 32. We've practiced that. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to simplify the radical. So the radical is square root of negative 32. That's going to break down the biggest perfect square that will divide into it is 16. So we have a negative 1 from the negative times 16 times square root of 2. And we have 16, square root of 16 is 4. Square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of 2. So that is going to get put back in place of the square root of negative 32, it's going to turn into 4i squared root of 2. So I'm going to substitute that back in now. So we have a negative 12 plus minus 4i square root of 2 divided by 22. Now the last step is to simplify each term, and we're going to do this with a little heart. I'll explain the heart. You have three different terms in the problem. We have negative 12, we have 4i squared root of 2, and we have 22. You are within those terms, you are looking at either the term itself, so like negative 12, the coefficient, or the term. So we're looking at negative 12, 4, and 22. These are all divisible by the same number. They're all divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide negative 12 by 2, I get negative 6. Divide 4 by 2, I get 2. And 22 divided by 2, I get 11. So my final answer is x equals a negative 6 plus or minus 2i squared root of 2 divided by 11. Now there are two answers there, and I'll write them out so we can see both answers. You have x equals a negative 6 plus 2i squared root of 2 divided by 11. And we also have negative 6 minus 2i squared root of 2 divided by 11. There are two answers. You can write them out separately or together. And the two answers are coming from that plus minus, plus minus. Everything else is the same. Typically, we just write this top one. That just signifies that we have the two answers written together. All right, now I'm going to go a little quicker with number 1. So we have number 1. We got to move all the terms to one side. So minus 2x. Line up your like terms. We have 5x squared minus 7x minus 13 equals 0. We have our a is 5, b is negative 7, c is negative 13. So substitute those in to the quadratic formula. 4 times 5 times negative 13 divided by 2 times a. Simplify each term. Opposite of negative 7 is a positive 7. Negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 5 times negative 13 is positive 260 divided by 10. 7 plus or minus the square root of 309 divided by 10. If you go to try to simplify what's the biggest perfect square that divides out of 309, there isn't one. You could do a little bit of, if you wanted to think about dividing, 309 does divide by, if you want to do a tree, 103 and 3. But no, 103 doesn't simplify, neither does 3. So that will not, I just tried to make it smaller so I could have numbers to work with. Here are both my answers. All right, moving on to number 2. We have, move all your terms to one side. Get 9x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. A is 9, b is 4, c is negative 4. Substitute them in to the formula. Divide by 2 times a. Simplify each term. We have 36 times 4, 144. This is a positive 144. Look at it. I look at it as a negative times a positive times a negative. Negative times a negative is the plus. And then divide by 18. Get it together. Square root of 160 over 18. I now need to look at the square root of 160. I pull it off to the side and simplify. Biggest perfect square that will divide out of 160 is 16. And the square root of 16 is 4. So that's going to end up being negative 4 plus or minus 4 square root of 10 over 18. Now I got to look at the negative 4, 4, and 18. That's kind of wonky. So negative 4, 4, and 18, those are all divisible by 2. I'm going to divide negative 4 by 2, I get negative 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So my final answer for this is I have a negative 2 plus and minus 2 square root of 10 divided by 9. There are my two solutions to that quadratic equation. Number 3, I'm going to subtract 7a. I get 5a squared plus 6a minus 144 equals 0. And we have my a is 5, b is negative 6, c is negative 144. Man, that's a big number. So we have x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root 6 squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Simplify each term. I'm going to have to use the calculator for this. So 20 times 144. That's going to be a positive 2,880. Make sure you get that as an answer. Divided by 10. Sub plus 36. 2,916. Now, if I give you a number like this, I'm not going to be a meanie about this. Square root of 2,916. I would just put that right into the calculator, and it is actually a perfect square. It's 500 or 54 divided by 10. Now you see the square root is gone. When it's gone, you actually are going to break this problem up into the two individual problems. You have negative 6 plus 54 divided by 10, and we have x equals negative 6 minus. So I'm breaking it up because of the plus minus. We have the positive, we have the negative. 54 divided by 10. The top problem, we get 48 over 10, which reduces down to 24 over 5. That's one of my solutions. And I get a negative 60, come on, Mr. Johnson, divided by 10 is negative 6. There's my other solution to this quadratic. All right, number 4. I'm going to add 4. No like terms, so I'm just going to squeeze that in next to the 3b. And that's going to equal 0. My a is 7, b is 3, my c is 4. Substitute that in. Four times a times c divided by 2 times a. Get 9. 28 times 4. I think 112 it is, so minus 112 over 14. Keep simplifying inside the radical. Get that, it's called the discriminant. Get that down to a number, and then let's figure out how we're going to work with that number. Square root of negative 103. Negative 103 actually breaks down into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 103. 103 does not break down at all. There's no perfect square to divide into it, so this just ends up being I square root of 103. Divided by 14. There is nothing to simplify with the little heart, with the constants and coefficients, so that is it. Moving on, number 5. All right, this one I already have it equals 0. You can have a is 6, b is 6, and c is negative 3. You certainly can do that. It'll work out. I'm actually going to take and do the greatest common factor right away. What this is going to do is it's going to simplify and make our a, b, and c smaller. So the greatest common factor is 3. So I'm going to divide each term by 3. 3, so we get 6x squared divided by 3 is 2x squared. Do this in 6x divided by 3 is 2x, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now what I'm going to forget about that 3 on the outside. There's no variable with it. So my a is 2, b is 2, c is negative 1. And that's going to make these numbers a lot smaller. Not that say you can't work with it before the way it was, but you can. This is going to be a little simpler. 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So I get negative 2 plus or minus 4 plus 8 divided by 4. In the end, you're going to get the exact same answer. You just will have to simplify. Square root of 12. Let's simplify that. And that is 4 and 3. Which is 2, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 3. And we still got to simplify. So negative 2, 2, and 4, all divisible by 2. So we get x equals a negative 1 plus or minus 1 times the square root of 3 is, we're just going to write square root of 3 divided by 2. There's your final answer. All right, number 6. Let's get all of our like terms on one side. Looks like the a is going to be positive if I keep it there. So add 12b, subtract 4, subtract 4. 6b squared minus 3b minus 24 equals 0. There is a greatest common factor here. Again, you don't have to do the greatest common factor, but it will be much nicer of numbers if you do. So I divide each by 3 in this case. We get 3 on the outside. 6b squared divided by 3 is 2b squared. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 24 divided by 3 is 8. My a is 2, b is negative 1, and my c is negative 8. Let's substitute those in. Negative 1 squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Opposite of negative 1 is a positive 1. We have negative 1 squared is 1, and that is a plus 64 divided by 4. Simplifying the discriminant, 1 plus 64 is 65. Underneath the square root is the discriminant, and divide by 4. If we're going to try to simplify the square root of 65, it ends in a 5, so really the only thing that's going to work is most likely 5 or 25. That's not going to work. Nothing simplifies. You could actually think about 5 and 13, but those are neither one of those have any kind of perfect squares in them, so that's not going to work. So this is actually your final answer. All right, number 7. I'm going to move all my terms, so subtract 5. Let me make this bigger. V squared. I'm subtracting 5v squared because 9v squared minus 5v squared is going to be 4v squared, which then that's a positive a value, so that's good. I'm going to add 11, squeeze that in, subtract v because this is a positive v, subtract v. And remember, there is a 1 in front, so that's like subtracting 1v, so that's going to be 6v plus 11 equals 0. A is 4, b is 6, c is 11. X equals opposite 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Negative 6 plus or minus 36, and that's going to be 44, 176 divided by 8. 36 minus 176 is negative 140. Ooh, what am I doing? Negative 140 divided by 8. Let's simplify that. Square root of negative 140. So that can be broke down into 140 divides by 4. Yes. And that is actually the biggest it can divide. So I got the negative 1. I got a square root of 4, and then that's the square root of 35. The reason why I knew that was the biggest, 35 is 7 and 5. It doesn't break down into any other perfect squares. So I know that 4 is going to be the biggest. You can keep going, but that is the biggest. So we have the square root of negative 1 is I, square root of 4 is 2, and then we have is 35. Switch that around, so it's negative 6 plus or minus 2i square root of 35 divided by 8. The last step is to look at our 3 terms, look at those constants, to divide by 2, negative 3, divide by 2 you get 1, divide by 2 you get 4. You get x equals a negative 3 plus or minus 1 times I is I, square root of 35 divided by 4. All right, number 8. So this one, your a is 1, your b, there actually isn't a b term there, so that's going to be 0, and your c is negative 81. So x equals the opposite of b plus minus b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. So 0, you can't do the opposite. 0, 0, 0. You don't even have to write the 0. 0 squared is 0 plus 324 divided by 2. So 0 we don't need there, plus minus, we do need that. Square root of 324 divided by 2. Square root of 324 is a perfect square. And that is, oh my gosh, I think it's 18. Yes, it is. 18 divided by 2. Let's get this split up. 18 divided by 2 and a negative 18 divided by 2 is 9 and negative 9. Honestly, thinking about this one, this would be the easiest because it only has one variable in the problem to solve it by square roots. And this is why I showed you guys. So you would have added 81. And then when you square root, you have positive negative. You get x equals a positive and negative. Square root of 81 is 9. Look how much quicker that is. Crazy. All right, 2 last problems. Number 9. You have subtract 1. You have a like term there. And then we have our a, b, and c. Positive 6. Opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So negative 11 plus or minus 121, that is 72 over 6. Negative 11 plus or minus the square root of 121 minus 72 is 49. Love it when it's a perfect square. X equals negative 11 plus or minus the square root of 49 is 7 over 6. We now have the square root gone, so we need to break it into 2 problems. Negative 11 plus 7 divided by 6, and negative 11 minus 7 divided by 6. Simplify the numerator as a negative 4 divided by 6, which simplifies to negative 2/3. The denominator, or the bottom one here, is negative 18 divided by 6, which simplifies to negative 3. And there are your 2 solutions to that quadratic. And the last problem. Add 10, add 10. Uh-oh. I see a problem. The a is not positive. So what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to move all the terms to the other side. I should have done this right away. Or you can just multiply everything by negative 1, and that's going to do the exact same thing. So my a is 6, b is positive 4, my c is positive 9. B squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So negative 4 plus or minus 16. We got 24 times 9, 216, divided by 12. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 200, divided by 12. Let's simplify that square root of 200. Square root of negative 200 is going to be square root of negative 1 times square root of 100 times the square root of 2. So we have I times the square root of 100 is 10, square root of 2. So that's going to turn into x equals a negative 4 plus or minus 10I square root of 2 divided by 12. Let's look at our negative 4, 10, and 12 can all be divisible by, are all divisible by 2. So that's negative 2, 5, and 6. So we have our final answers, negative 2 plus and minus 5I square root of 2 divided by 6. And there are 2 answers there. Thanks for watching.